And this was just a really fun time. Like, this is the sort of romance book that I actually really enjoy. Again, hello my loves, and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten and we are doing my reading wrap up for September. So before we get into all the books that I read for the month, I thought it'd be good to talk about the books that I didn't get to for my TBR game. Only one this month, which I'm really pleased with actually, except it's a book I have been meaning to read for ages. It is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie, and this was for the prompt of the oldest book on my TBR, and I still didn't get to it. This book has been on so many TBRs. Honestly, it's a joke at this point. I really need to read it. It's to the point that I bought this when it had first come out, and Bella Mackie now has a brand new book out. We need to read this. We need to get it done. I do actually want to read it. I think it should be a fun, entertaining time. Do I think it's going to be a new favourite? No. But I have heard some people that have really liked this one. So yeah, I just need to actually try it, especially now there's another book out. It's completely separate. They're standalones. I need to know if I like Bella Mackie's writing to know if I want to go out and buy that book. So it's got to happen soon. Probably not going to happen this year because we're already at the end of it and I have so many books I want to read, but you know, we can dream, we can hope. So yeah, unfortunately we didn't get to that one. And I did have 2 DNFs this month, but other than that, the reading's been really solid, so let's just dive straight into it. First up with the DNFs. So I did DNF a short story, and that is inside Mary Shelley's Transformation. This is a short story collection of 3 gothic stories. I really enjoyed the first 2, which was Transformation and The Mortal Immortal. Unfortunately, I tried reading The Evil Eye. It was only 40 pages long. Unfortunately, I just didn't like it. I got 10 pages into it and I was finding it really, really dry, and I just wasn't interested. I did flick through a bit to see if it picks up, if there's something interesting that happens to make it worthwhile for me. Nothing was capturing my interest in this, so I ended up DNF it. It's unfortunate, but it is known to happen within a short story collection. You're not always going to get on with everything, so that didn't really work, unfortunately, but we gave it a good go and it's finally off of my in the middle of reading list, which is great. So I can get that one fully ticked off. And then the other DNF was a book I had high hopes for. I had really high hopes for it, and that is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Somebody Dies. And I bought this one specifically on Kindle to read while I was on holiday, except I did not enjoy this. It's a murder mystery. It's meant to be a murder mystery book. However, the murder just doesn't happen. I got 60% of the way through the book and there was still no murder. I was so disappointed. We were getting a list of suspects, we were getting a list of motivations and all these things, except there wasn't a murder. So it's like, well, why are you telling me that all these people have the motives and all of this if nobody's died? And we know who's going to die, except it doesn't happen. So you're just like, why? I mean, don't get me wrong, the guy that should be dying is an absolute douchebag, so you want him to die, it just doesn't happen. And for me, a murder mystery, it should be something that the murder happens in like the first 20% of the book, so then spend the rest of the book investigating it. And this different way of doing it, it just wasn't my thing, unfortunately. I do know a lot of people have enjoyed this book, it just didn't work for me. Premise of it, we're following a main character who is an author. She became an author because 10 years prior she went on holiday and there was this investigation that was happening that led to a murder and she got tangled up in it, and it did seem really fun and interesting, that premise. Now 10 years later she's an established murder mystery author, she's going on holiday again and another murder is happening without the murder apparently. And I just don't want to wait all the way to the end of the book for a murder to happen. Like, it should be the other way around. So yeah, that one didn't work for me. Thankfully, the other ebook I read for the month really did work for me, and that was the Discord book club pick for the month, which was The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. This was a book I was a little bit apprehensive about, but I actually ended up really enjoying this. This is a sci-fi dystopian mystery. I really enjoyed it. I liked the premise of it all. So it's set on this Greek island, which is where the last of humanity lives, because there is this fog that surrounds the world that has caused it so that anything that comes into contact with the fog gets ripped apart. And so you have the last of humanity living out on this little island, and everyone seems to know their place. They're all very, very happy. They all have their little jobs that contribute to society, and it's just really nice. Except the more you find out about the society, the more sinister things seem to be cropping up, and you're like, this doesn't really seem right. Then of course we have the murder, and then things go on from there. You get lots of different reveals. Some of it I found predictable, some of it I thought was really good, and I really enjoyed the twists and turns. I enjoyed it. This was a really good book to discuss, so I'm really pleased it got chosen for the book club, because it was probably the most talked about book that we've had. Murder mysteries tend to get quite a lot of discussion around them anyway, because like people are talking about their theories and things, which was good. But this one, I think because of the elements that were in it, it just made it very, very interesting to talk about, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very good book, definitely worth a read. So yeah, very, very pleased with that. Then I thought I'd briefly mention 2 books that I did technically read in August as ebooks, but the video for it only just came out in September, and that is for the new cozy releases video that I've been doing. So these are vlogs that are coming out once a month where I'm reading 3 new cozy releases books. Doesn't matter the genre, as long as they're new and they're cozy. 2 of the ebooks that I read in August for that is The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, which, I loved this book so much. It was so cute and cozy. I did read it out of order. This is the second book in the Dream Harbour series. The first book was The Pumpkin Spiced Cafe. You don't technically need to read them in order because they are following different characters, but there are some crossover to the first book, and like some, if you don't want certain spoilers. For me, it's a romance series. I'm really not that bothered about spoilers in a romance series because it's a romance. You know they're going to get together at the end. But I really enjoyed this one. I really liked the premise. It was very cute and cozy. I won't get into it too much because obviously I do have that whole video. And then the other one that I read for that is Near Duke Well, which again, I really enjoyed this one. It was very funny. It was definitely more Regency rom-com, but it was very, very entertaining. What I liked most about it was our main character, who has decided to lash out against society in a very subtle way. Kind of subtle way, in that we have this revolving bookstore. The idea is basically you have a subscription service to this bookstore, and you can subscribe, pay some money, and you can loan out books. But this one is a very particular one where it has a Venus catalogue, and it's all about teaching women about sex and sexuality at a time when they're kept very closeted about these things and not allowed to know about these things. And it's our main character's way of fighting out against that, because she thinks it's so wrong that women need to be kept in the dark about these sort of things. You've got more of an actual like romance going on and things like that, but that was a subplot line in this that I really, really liked. So yeah, both really good cozy books that I very much enjoyed. And that was it for the ebooks that I wanted to talk about. I do have one physical book that I read in the month of August, again for that cozy vlog, and that is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean. This one is definitely a young adult book, and it feels very young. It's a shame because our main characters are actually meant to be adults in this book, but they read very, very young, like almost like they should be at high school or something. But this one is a cute fantasy, a little bit of romance. I wasn't that impressed with the romance in here, especially because it goes in one direction, then we do a 180 and it goes in another direction, and I'm just like, I don't mind a enemies to lovers story, except for the fact that it was such a weird instant love from enemies to lovers, and all of it was such a really silly misunderstanding. I just wasn't a massive fan of it. Found it very predictable, but I really liked the world. I really love this world. We're in this magical world where we have magical creatures in these zoos, and our main character is a zookeeper, and so we get to know all of these different magical creatures. And I did really enjoy the day-to-day parts of just looking after these creatures. The conversations that they were having were so young that I couldn't get on with it, unfortunately, but I do think a lot of people will really enjoy this one, especially if you do like middle grade, that young end young adult, like really young middle grade, maybe transitioning to young adult. I think it would be good for that. It's just didn't quite work for me, unfortunately. Now let's move on to all the physical books I read in September, and yeah, it's been a great month. So we have Love Will Tear Us Apart by C.K. McDonald. This is a third book in the Stranger Times series, and I read this one for purchase in 2023. I really enjoyed this one. It was so much fun. I loved being back with our characters. This is a kind of paranormal mystery series. Each book has its own little mystery that is trying to solve, with an overarching plot line that gets carried through, and that plot line definitely got explored a little bit bit more in here, which I really appreciated. But basically, we're at the Stranger Times, which is a newspaper company in Manchester, and they report on all the weird and unusual happenings. But what if all those weird things that people kind of shrug off as like, oh, that's ridiculous, it's not actually real, like ghosts and UFOs, what if they're real? And I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. Like, I love this series. I really, really recommend it. It's just so entertaining. So this is a great time. Highly recommend. Really, really enjoyed reading that. Definitely want to get the 4th book that's currently out. Really want to get that and get this series up to date with, because I love it. I think it's fantastic. And this one specifically, there was a bit of a deeper plot line going on to do with grief, and I really loved it. I think the ending was so bittersweet, but it worked perfectly. And yeah, I loved how C. Kate McDonald was able to tie in that storyline of grief and loss, but with his signature hilarious jokes. Like, some of the jokes are just so borderline sometimes, but so much fun. I really, really enjoy it. Really good book. Really enjoyed that. Okay, then we have a book I read for a video, which is for the Books of Stories. They were doing their Halloween special. I really enjoyed this book, actually. It was very good. This is A Good House for Children by Katie Collins, and this was not a book I've ever heard anyone talking about. This is a gothic horror story that is so eerie. I read it in the space of 24 hours and I did really like it. I thought the atmosphere was really chilling. We've got 2 different timelines going on, and it's showing in each one a family where they've just moved to this house in Dorset, but things, maybe they aren't quite as good as they seem. The house is really old, it's really rickety, and maybe there's some paranormal ghostly happenings. It's so good. I really liked the writing style of this. Definitely want to keep out for anything else Katie Collins writes, because this was a debut as well, and I just think the atmosphere for it was so perfect. I really did enjoy this one. So really pleased that this one was brought to my attention, because again, that's the kind of purpose behind Books of Stories anyway, is bringing our attention to these books that have been lost to the ether but are very good. And yeah, so would recommend, especially if you do like a slower, more gothic built story, but the ending just kind of leave it a little bit like open. But I liked that. I really enjoy a book like that. So yeah, this really does mess with how the main character sees things. Is it just a mental state? Is it stuff that's actually happening? I like books like that. So this was very good, surprisingly good as well. Then we had my light academia reading vlog, and I read In the Labyrinth of Drakes, part of the Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan. This was also for my TBR prompt of reading a fantasy book, and I really enjoyed this one. It was about time I finally got to read in this book. I've been meaning to read it for such a long time, but this is the 4th book in the Lady Trent series, and I really enjoy this series. This series, we're following Lady Trent, and she is writing her memoirs of what's happened, and we start at the very start when we meet her as a very young child. She is interested in becoming a naturalist specializing in dragons. However, she is told this is not a womanly pursuit. This is set in kind of like, think like Edwardian times. And so women were not supposed to be learning things, they were not supposed to be studying, especially things that were seen as manly. Sure, you can be an artist, but you can't study science. And we have Lady Trent, who pushes out against that, gets to go on these different adventures studying dragons. We also get some beautiful illustrations throughout the work, because she is still an artist. That's how she first managed to go on the very first adventure, is by being their field artist, while eventually worming her way into other things. But that's what I love about this book. We get some gorgeous illustrations. Each book focuses on a different societal topic, which I really enjoy. And I just thought this was absolutely fantastic. Yes, there are some sciencey bits to do with dissecting the dragons, because it is all in the name of science. But I just think this series is really good, really underrated. Well, I say underrated. It's definitely been getting more hype lately, which is lovely, but works perfectly for that light academia where you're having someone that is obsessed with their field of study, and you get to learn about it and everything, but it's not in the dark academia way of it's going to end up causing them to make some morally questionable decisions. It's good. I really enjoy it. Alongside the Light Academia vlog, I also read A Letter to the Luminous Deep by Sylvie Catherall, and this, brilliant. Really, really enjoyed. This is a very, very slow book. I will say that it's very, very slow. You've really got to take your time with it. This is all done in epistolary format as well. We are actually mainly following these 2 characters starting to converse because their siblings were interested in one another. Like they had started up this blossoming romance across the course of these letters, but then something happened to them which they believe that they're dead, and they're just trying to find out what happened to that lead up, trying to like just learn more about them. So they start swapping letters so that they can read their sibling story of that taking place, that romance taking place. At the same time, we have this other slight mystery happening with this area called the Ridge that, and let me get up all their names so it's a little bit easier. Is it Sylvie? Sophie. Sophie is a scientist. She's going into deep water to explore this ridge at the same time as E is conversing with Henry in their letters and that blossoming love story happening. And the Ridge is very, very interesting because it's the deepest point, and so they're starting to explore it, and then weird things start happening, and it should be quite sinister and creepy and unnatural, but the way that this is done, it's there to be interesting and you really want to know what's happening, but it doesn't feel too dark either. I don't know how they did it, but it was really, really well done. But it very much is a very slow burn book, so you have to be in the mood for a slow book. I do think the mystery is worth it. I like the world as well, because majority of the world is underwater, and I really like that concept. It was really, really beautiful, really poignant. There were some slow moments, but for something that if you just take your time with it, it's a really nice book. And it is focused on light academia, because the reason why E and Henry start exchanging letters anyway is because E witnesses something that she's like, I've never seen this before, I don't know what this is. And Henry is a scholar, and actually a lot of people in this world are scholars because they're all about trying to investigate the planet and understand all these different things. So there is a lot of academia in this book, just in a very different setting to the usual university setting that we would expect. It's all underwater and stuff, and I think it was beautiful. The world was absolutely stunning, and I really liked our characters. I loved the way they slowly started to get to know one another. Like, this very much is a book that is slow and meandering, but also kind of just latches on and pulls at the things that work for me. Like, I liked it. It worked. A very, very slow book, which I know I've said a lot, but I know that is something that will end up putting a lot of people off because of how slow it is. But for me, I did find it very interesting. I did really want to know what was happening with this mystery, and by the end of it, some of the reveals and stuff, I'm like, oh, I really want to see where this is going to go. So I'm definitely going to be getting the second book. We then have A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch by Sarah Hawley, and this one was for the prompt of Thrifted, and this was just a really fun time. Like, this is the sort of romance book that I actually really enjoy. Again, second book in a series that I didn't realise, and this is definitely a series you should read in order. For me, I didn't mind too much reading it out of order. Again, as I said, with a romance book, you know at the end of the first book they're gonna get together. The first one is A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. However, it's not just a romance series, there is actually a plotline happening which does cross over the books. So I feel like reading them in order for the plotline would have been good, not necessarily for the romance, because you know that they're gonna get together anyway. But I think this series you should read in order. It's just, I picked this one up thrifted, and this is the one that I had, and I wanted to read it, and it was good. I now have the first book on Kindle. It's actually on the 99p Kindle deals, so if you want to give it a try, you can always give it a read. But I enjoyed this one. I like Sarah Hawley's writing. I thought it was so easy to read, so funny. I enjoyed our characters. They were really personable. You could really get to know them. In this, what's basically happening? We have a witch, we have a demon. They do not like each other. Or, well, the demon can't remember why he's not meant to like her, why they don't get on, but she remembers pretty darn well, because 12 hours, is it 12 or 24 hours earlier? Not that long ago, they had just met at the end of the first book, and oof, they did not get on. She actually gave him a right kicking, and she's just like, we do not get on. However, start of this book, the demon Asheroth, he's in a really bad way. He's getting beat up, and she, our main character, Calidea, she is very much like, no, I'm not about that, and goes in to save the day, not realising that she's saving Asheroth, and ends up going on this quest to help him. It's really, really fun and entertaining. I like the fact that we get both viewpoints. Each chapter is a different viewpoint, so you either get Calidea or Asheroth, and I just liked it. It was so much fun, so entertaining. Definitely going to read the rest of the books. Really enjoyed this one. If you're looking for like a paranormal romance that's just a lot of fun, then I would give this series a try. I think it was great. So yeah, very pleased with that. Okay, then we have Magnolia Park's Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings, and this was combining 2 prompts of a contemporary and over 500 pages. And you know what, I was a bit disappointed with this one. I feel like it needed a lot more editing, a lot more tightening up. I do like the Magnolia Park series. It is a contemporary romance series that I just binged towards the end of last year, and I was very much looking forward to this book coming out because where the 4th book left off, it was in such a devastating place. Or I should technically say 3rd book, because the odd numbers follow Magnolia Parks, the even numbers follow Daisy Hates. Same timeline that's happening, just following different characters. It does actually work, and I do prefer Daisy Hates, I think, because there's more intrigue going on there. But this just, it was so drawn out. Like, I like the storyline to it. I mean, this is the worst romance ever. It's a terrible romance because it's such a toxic situation. But I do find it very fun, very entertaining. The writing is not good at all. I hate to be brutally honest, but it's not the best, but I still really enjoyed the book. It's just this one was too drawn out. I feel like there was so much of this book that could have been cut out that I would have preferred. I did like the storyline of grief in this. I thought that was really, really well done, but at the same time, too drawn out. It was too drawn out, which is such a shame to say, but I don't know if I'm gonna keep that book or if I'm even gonna read the next Daisy Hates, but like, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just something I'll pick up on Kindle, something like that, and have as a Kindle read, because they are really easy reads. Like, if you're needing a book where it's just like head empty, easy book to read that's also a bit of a car crash, so it's kind of engaging, sure, that's it. It's not really a series I would very much recommend, unfortunately. But that brings us to the last book I read of September, and it was a reread, which I'm so pleased with. I really want to make an active effort to reread more because I used to love rereading, and that is Master of Sorrows by Justin Cole, and this one was for read the first in a series, and I didn't want to start a brand new series this close to the end of the year. Okay, I have already started a few, but decided to go for a reread for this one, and I'm really, really pleased I did, because I did enjoy this on reread a lot more than the first time. I enjoyed it the first time, but I think when I was reading this, I was reading so much fantasy that this felt very samey in a way to a lot of things that I've already read, and this is. I don't think this book is doing anything particularly new, but I like what it's doing. In this one, we are following a Nymph, and a Nymph was born without, I think it's his left hand. That's a really bad thing to happen, because in this world, being born without a limb is a sign of basically this evil god, Chaos. And if that happens, the parents are stoned to death and the child is left out in the woods to die. It's seen as really bad, the same as magic is seen as really bad in this world. And you do get to learn more about that as it goes through. I actually really like the lore of this world and learning about the gods, goddesses, what happened, why magic is seen as so bad and things. I really, really enjoyed that. But Nymph, he's in a very unique position because, well, he does have a missing limb. And he's actually living with a priest who has magic. And it's that magic that is helping keep him alive and keep his secret hidden. And he knows that not all magic is bad. At the same time, he's in this very small village and they train young people into becoming someone that is going to go out and get all these magical artifacts and bring them back to this, I'm going to call it a college. It's kind of like a temple almost, where they're keeping all of the magical artifacts underground, locked away from people. He really wants to be a part of that. He also really wants to get with this girl. Like, he's a young boy in this, but I also really like that because he's very emotional. He makes loads of mistakes. He is technically a chosen one, but he's a chosen one that makes mistakes, and I really like that. He is not a chosen one at the age of 16 who's got everything together and knows exactly what to do, and he is 16 years old. He has emotions. He's all over the place. He's trying to be an adult while also being a child, and it's fun. I really like the way Justin Cole did the characterization. It felt very real, which I really appreciated. And just the story in this I thought was really good. And again, like I say, it's not doing anything massively new. It's a little bit slow, but I like where it left off, and I'm really intrigued to read the second book. And the reason why I wanted to reread this one is because I'd forgotten so much of this book, and I wanted to move on to the second one, but couldn't until I'd actually reread this first one. And yeah, upon reread, I thought this was really, really good. It's got a lot of plot points that reminded me of Malice by John Gwynne. Very, very different books, but just kind of like similar plot threads in a way, but with a lot less POVs. You only have a Nymph point of view in this book, with a few of like finding out about the gods and goddesses at the start of each part, which I liked. So I feel like this is a really nice entry into high fantasy, because it's very easy to read while having all of the plot points of high fantasy that you've come to expect, or at least I've come to expect. It's good. I really like it. I don't want to overhype it because, you know, it's not doing anything amazingly new. So somebody that's read loads and loads of fantasy may find it a little bit less interesting, but I'm still someone that's read a lot of fantasy and I still really enjoyed it. Yeah, I think it's a good book. I think it's well worth the time, and I'm really looking forward to that second book. I think it's really going to expand, and because of that, it's going to be really worth it. But right, okay, we are at the end of all the books that I have read in the month of September. I had a really good reading month. I read a couple of chunky books. I've overall just enjoyed the different things that I have read. It's been a good time. So please let me know, have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What was your favourite or least favourite read in September? You will have to let me know. But I've been talking for a little while now, so I am going to go. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every single one of you that takes the time to watch these videos. It really does mean a lot. If you have made it this far but you just don't know what to comment, then you can always leave maybe a witch emoji in the comments below. Leave that and I'm gonna go. If you have enjoyed this video, then please do consider giving it that thumbs up, subscribing and commenting. Those 3 things really help this channel out, so thank you. My social media links, anyone I've mentioned, will be linked below for you, and I will of course catch you in the very next video.